Traders, this is Christian Farmer at Choppy Trade Group, and this is your end of day stock market recap for Thursday, the 19th. One more day of the trading week to go. Reminder that we might hear something from the Supreme Court on tariffs tomorrow, or I don't know if they want to make that more political and do that next week during the during the State of the Union address. It's just crazy the way they unfold these things. Risk disclaimer in front of you. Everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. Please read the full risk disclaimer there. Well, a pretty mixed day. I think overall, what's been weighing on the market is maybe a little bit of that too, and just the fact that we know that there's been um, more U.S. forces moving to the Middle East to possibly confront Iran. There was just a story out that came out just a few minutes after the close here about President Trump is weighing an initial limited military strike on Iran to force it to meet his demands for a nuclear deal. The opening assaults could be a target with a few military or government sites, and if Iran still refused to comply, the U.S. would respond with a broad campaign against regime facilities. Trump hasn't yet decided to order an attack, but he is considering options ranging from a week-long campaign of attacks to force regime change to a smaller scale wave of strikes of Iran's government and military facilitators. So there you go. The market kind of rebounded somewhat at the end of the day as I think Trump spoke to reporters a little bit too and hinted at that. But it seems like all along, like that's that's basically how Trump negotiates, and I've talked about that a little bit of these videos that, and I've certainly have talked about it in the weekend video for members that that's the way Trump operates. He tries to operate as a big negotiator. So, and if you've taken some negotiation classes, you know that they say to start with a hard line and then come in to basically try to get what you want. But anyway, that's what we've got on hands, and that's kind of why there's a lot of things, a lot of different dynamics going on in the market. But for now, I think that's what the market is kind of concerned with. So let's talk about what did well today. It was a choppy market session. I will go over the indices in just a second, but I thought it was. I've saw some option positioning going on in the precious metals, more so silver today. Bitcoin actually did okay today. It was up 1.4%. You could see the miners acted really well. So the silver miners, SIL, was up 2.7%. And I actually like that better than silver. It's just seeing like charts look a bit more appealing today. The agriculture ETF was up very nicely today. That was on the back of Deere. What a big move in for Deere and their earnings report. Yeah, I've been kind of joking around a little bit on social media that this is a market for cats and deers. That's a horrible joke, but it's really been fitting what the market has been doing. It's Caterpillar and Deere have been very strong, and that move in Deere is just unbelievable. I retweeted this. I retweeted a post from a couple of years ago where I think it was the end of 2024, where I said, "Hey, Deere's kind of breaking out of a multi-year um, base," and and it certainly continued. It kind of went back and forth a little bit, and then it broke out further. Obviously, mainly towards the end of last year and this year, but that's been one heck of a move. Utilities were up a little bit of a dip there yesterday. They climbed back 1.7%, and then energy, which I got long some energy yesterday, sold some today. Just kind of just like anything else, but when there's fears of tensions or possible war, usually energy stocks do very well. Defense stocks usually do pretty well into that. And then, if there's no, if the world doesn't end, then those stocks usually come back in a bit. So let's start to kind of go over some charts. But what didn't perform well was solar. By the way, it was down 3.2%. I got rid of I had an NXT trade on. Again, it's, as I said in yesterday's video, this market, that's why I took two targets in the trade yesterday, because I know that that's some of these names, they just one day they look great and then the next day they look absolutely horrible. That's the way that this market has been going. It's been more of a day traders market probably than trying to deal with some of these names that don't have any follow through from a day-to-day standpoint. Let me bring up the chart. So we've got a number of things to go through. So I'll try to talk quickly. Um, bring this in. This, by the way, I've been using this. This is a like very good way to kind of look at charts. This is the SPY chart on top. This is the daily chart, and this is the 1 hour chart. Because from my time frame, your time frame may be different than mine, but I'm mainly a swing trader where I'm holding positions anywhere from a couple days to usually a couple weeks, but sometimes a couple months, depending if the trend works really well. I never define that. I always hear people on other presentations they're like, well, how long do you hold your trades for? Really depends if they act well. If the trades act well, I would love to be in trades for 6 months, a year, if they trend the right way. Oftentimes I'm in and out of a name where it works really well for me. I take profits and then it begins to pull back. And then I go back into that name once it starts to begin to go higher. But I'm really not defined by, you know, uh, if the trade works, I keep it on. So I've been in trade months before some swing trades without really doing much, and sometimes they don't move that much, but there's still the um, signal is still active. But in any event, but I do look at this because a lot of times, if the trade doesn't work, sometimes, especially with this market, I'm in and out of some trades, like just like NXT, I was in that trade put that trade on yesterday, out of it this morning. So, but this is a good way to see things how are unfolding. So I'll come back to this in just a second, but I just want to go over first. Let's just bring up a regular chart here. Sorry, let me go back to 1 hour here. And let me switch this back so that you can see this. But for now, there's really in the major indices, SPY, Qs, IWM, and I'll go over all of those really quickly. There's nothing really to say anything has changed here. They're still locked below this value area for the month and the 50-day moving average. So how do we define that really simply? It's just not a position of strength to be underneath the 50-day moving average. Now, one other thing that gets me a little bit worried is that every time that we've been below this 50-day moving average over the last, 3 4 months, we've snapped back pretty quickly. Right, this was probably the most damage that we saw back in November. But in 3 days, after this big red candle, 3 days and it took to retake this. We've now been below this after this big red candle. We've been below the 50-day moving average for 1 2 3 4 days. So that's now the longest. So we don't know if the trend is changing. We certainly have not been able to overtake that uh, uh, the resistance. And again, I don't know if it's because of the possible event risk with what I've already discussed. Qs also are sitting here in a position of weakness. Notice, yesterday's rally did not hold, and we're just sitting back here at this five period moving average right now. So we're trying to retake it, but just don't have enough strength, conviction, you name it. And we are sitting above, major support, which is this 592.67 level, but we're way below the 50-day moving average and the value area for the month. IWM doesn't seem to know what it wants to do. It's just kind of locked in a range and locked inside the value area. So better looking than both SPY and Qs, I would argue, but whippy, right? Didn't close on the lows on Tuesday. Didn't close anywhere near the highs yesterday. Today was a little bit more strength to it. Just to go through the rest of the indices really quickly, no follow through from again, this is, you just kind of chuckle because you're just not seeing any to very you're seeing very little follow through with things. I thought that was somewhat constructive yesterday that the Dow held the top of the value area and then bounced, and then it goes right back into the top of the value area. So it's a really tricky market. I think, just to be positive here for a second, right? If you're in this market every day, I'm a full-time trader, and obviously I run a trading service where I try to help out every day and try to provide trading signals and try to provide my perspective on the market. So I'm in the trenches every day, and if you're doing the same thing, and you're hanging in there, and you're not getting so frustrated where you're breaking monitors and doing all those types of things, like, give yourself a little bit of a pat on the back. I mean, it's you don't need to like judge yourself every second by whether your P&L is up or down for the day, right? If you're just managing to kind of hang out with this market and not get mentally exhausted, then it's very important. What Brian Shannon always has a saying that he talks about where he says something like, if the markets don't, if they'll, I forget his saying, I've already butchered it, but this is something like, if you don't get kind of caught in the market, they will wear you out. And you want to stay fresh. The market isn't going to always act this poorly in terms of like no follow through. It will get better. It always does, in my opinion. Sometimes it's longer periods where it doesn't act very well, but you want to stay fresh so that when it does act better, you're not sitting and hesitating. I could tell you probably I got worn out last year, and by the time when the market came around last year, I was not going after setups. I know other people that really cemented people's years last year, where they really started to go ahead and get aggressive once they figured out like that the lows were in last year, or just the fact that they said, okay, this has been enough to the downside, and people really did well. I did not. I kind of for about a month, I kind of just stayed on the sidelines, and it really defined my year last year. So I always try to provide little things in these videos to say, hey, try to do this, or try, this could possibly help. But if you're not getting burnt out, then you're doing really well. And if you are getting burnt out, that's okay too. Take a break. Right, you need to be fresh for when the market gives you good signals. Like today, I've been kind of frustrated the last couple days, but today I just saw things a little bit better today. So let me go back to this chart I want to show you, because I think this kind of helps. I was looking at this, and again, I flip back and forth. I'll go from the daily chart, then I'll go to the 1 hour chart. But I liked, right away, I was able to identify that number one on the daily chart, light has been just kind of consolidating. Notice it's been above, except for this one day, it's been basically above the 5-day moving average. So it's been acting really well in a tough market. And most of the optical type names, your Corning, your Sienna, that whole group is still acting well. So I got involved, right? When I saw this, that I was like, oh, we're just checking back to some support, which is the top of the value area for um, excuse me, the top of the value area for the week. So I got long this trade, and this helped me today. Again, not every trade worked very well, because I noticed, and I just want to go through these charts with you really quick so that you can see this, so that you see I'm not making this up. But look at how well Sienna is. So that again, the whole optical group is acting the best in tech. That's Sienna, GLW, which I don't think did much today, but GLW has already been it has been a bit extended. And I'm also in this VIAV. I've been in this for, speaking of time frame for trades, I've probably been in this for now about a week. I'm waiting for this to kind of retake the 5-day moving average and start to head back up and go towards this VPOC. For now, I'm just being patient with the trade. It may even pull back to this 20-day moving average again, which is not that far away. But again, good earnings for this one. So it used to be two groups were acting really well. The second group, and I tried to trade this name today because I looked at it yesterday and I said, oh, we got to dip. Half the time these names, when they dip down 4%, they come back, or at least they split the difference and they end up being down 2%. So you could see Western Digital, since it basically had earnings, it's just been kind of going sideways here. And there's been some real tests. Now, again, there's no breakdown here in Western Digital, but it does look a little bit tired, right? And if you go through this group, because again, this has been one of the strongest groups, you could basically call it, maybe it's just consolidating a little bit. Here's also Seagate, which is kind of going sideways. Here's Micron, which I think it actually did okay. It actually came back there at the end of the day. Again, it's still holding. I got tired of Micron in here and I sold it. I was long both Micron and SanDisk. I'm still long a little bit of SanDisk, but notice today, like SanDisk looked like it was going to get going today. And look at how well the top of the value area did, to tell you, like we were talking about this in the trading room today, like right around, I think it was around like 10, 1025, and Sandus traded all the way up to 635. And I said, well, let's see what it does. We still have about 35 minutes before this candle closes, which is really tough with 1 hour charts. You got to wait for a whole, sometimes it's the beginning of the candle and you're like, you're looking at the clock and you're like, geez, the candle's not going to close for another 30 minutes. That's a long time in trading. But there it goes again, and it didn't do it. It tried several other times and it smacked right up to 625 and it could not get through it. So maybe tomorrow it could take it out. Maybe it could take it out in the overnight market, but you could see that it's just seems like there's selling in there. Now, Western Digital had a secondary on this stock earlier this week, but it just looks like there's more selling whenever this thing looks like it's going to try to break out. For instance, if you go back to last week, the top of the value area for last week was right around 655. Got up here, and I was long. This is where I took profits, some profits last week, and I couldn't get through it. It tried again at towards the end of the week. So it's really honoring, if you're using volume, this system of volume at price, right, and understanding where the top of the value area is for the week, which is based on the previous week. It just shows it's not ready to break higher right now, and it's failing um, right at that significant resistance level. What else did I wanted to cover today? The aerospace and defense group has been again. I'm not sure if it's just acting well because of what's going on with the Middle East, because you can argue that, and I've traded aerospace defense now for a couple years, and a lot of times it's done really well, and there's nothing to do with some heightened situation going on. It's could just be a product of like defense spending, and so this is nice. I got long this on the first move here, and I was able to take my second target. I've also mentioned in a previous video this week. Oh, that's the wrong chart, that also XAR, which is the equally weighted ETF, is also looking pretty good, right? And you've got more things that are tied to, um, like vertical flight type companies, satellite companies, right? Here's PL, which I think looks pretty good. This is Planet Labs, trying to break into the value area. So again, like normally I would say this is a really good setup, but knock on wood, some right now with this market, what looks like a good setup one day sometimes doesn't look great the following day. But that's that. I mentioned I would go over the precious metals. Here's GLD. So again, looking at this top chart, it's pretty much a flat line for the last couple weeks. But again, you begin to kind of see things, right? Notice that these valuers are getting very slim. That means the price action is getting pretty tight. So I'm waiting for a break of 470 because I tried to trade last week in gold and it wasn't ready yet. But I will say this, right? And here's silver, just to look. As I mentioned, I saw some call buying in silver, either call buying or call positioning. Couldn't tell 100%. But you go through some of these charts, like look at AG today. Now AG had earnings today, but I think a couple of these things are starting to look pretty interesting. Right? Here's Pan American Silver. And again, these things are looking pretty the silver miners are looking a bit more constructive. Here's SIL, which is the global silver miners ETF. And here's the GDX, by the way, looks better than gold too. So I would keep an eye on what's going on here with gold, silver. And again, I think the gold and silver miners might be looking okay. I wanted the one last chart, deer, and I'm going to use this a little bit. It's fine. I'll just leave it like this. But again, since the beginning of this year, um, it, this kind of gave a shake and bake for a bit. So again, I liked deer. I've traded it a couple times. I had it in the old TTG trend portfolio for a bit, and what happened was it just fell a little bit too much. I didn't like it when it went below the 200-day moving average, and then was kind of a hands off for me. And then it went up a bit, and so kind of decent shake and bake. But once it got above these highs, whew, right? That's a monster move, and a monster move today. So there you go. The ETF that it's a bigger part of, it is in the XLI ETF, but it's only like a 2% weight. Is this veggie ETF, which is acting really well. Some people like Moo. But actually, I think that veggie ETF is a little bit stronger. All right, guys, I'll leave it there. Have a great night and see you tomorrow. Again, if you want to learn more about being a member of Tribeca Trade,